Welcome back to the afternoon sessions. We now present the panel titled A Call to the Future Problem Solvers, Uncovering Hidden Power and Charting a Just Future for Antarctica. And we are pleased to welcome our speakers, Edith Weeks, Elvir Mantzuki, Marisa de las Nieves Delgado, Hilary Saluk, and Jennifer Cunningham. We would like to remind you that this panel has a total duration of 60 minutes, including time for questions and answers. We kindly ask everyone to be mindful of the schedule so we can keep the program on track. Welcome.
St. Louis, Missouri. I'm very concerned about the future, as are the members of my panel. Here's how we're all connected. I'm going to focus on what I call pre-colonization of Antarctica, and I propose that it's already happening in process. And I'm concerned due to the accelerating climate change and temperatures and melting ice and the stepped up human activities in the region. I've created a legal ultrasound machine to help us detect hidden dynamics of power that have tended to operate in humanity's past, particularly when it has come to development and colonization scenarios. And we would like to speak now and influence the future. Neville Goddard tells us that we can plant seeds into the consciousness, the soil of the consciousness, and that's essentially what we're doing today with our discussion. We have Jennifer with us. She's a PhD candidate at Webster University, and she's a future educator, currently looking at ways to enlighten the future students to help them prepare today for what's yet to come in the future. We have Elvir Mantzuki. He is a faculty development specialist. He enables people to figure out how to use technology to make an impact and to change the world. We have Marisa. And if I understand it correctly, Marisa is the first woman born in Antarctica. And she's very concerned about the future of the native Antarctican community. She's going to speak with you about that. And we have Ellery. Ellery is a legal scholar. She's completing a Juris Doctorate in law, and she will be speaking about international law and its intersection with environmental policy and geopolitical strategy. My research deals with uncovering hidden mechanisms of power and politics. And as you know, law, especially at the international level, tends to be a function of the dynamics and factors that we call politics, economics, ideological, philosophical, cultural, institutional, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the challenge that we're faced with is we must understand, more people need to come to a greater understanding of the intersection, the nexus between international law and geopolitics. After all, law on the paper is no guarantee of compliance. For example, Stephen J. Hoffman, 2022 et al., analyzed approximately 250,000 international agreements, and their research determined that none of those international agreements had fully complied with the stated purpose therein. So humanity claims to want world peace, equality, justice, and environmental sustainability. And boy, do we have treaties and agreements and protocols, songs and movies, etc., but we still haven't achieved those goals. After today's presentations, listening into the lecturers, and yesterday's, I realized this conference provides the evidence that yes, colonization is already in process in Antarctica. The various bases, I think there are approximately 70 down in the Antarctic region. And I know, we're supposed to just say they're research bases and they don't have anything to do with military economics, I know. But any building structures, someone presented showing the decaying heritage. Old buildings that are no longer used are in Antarctica. For me, using a lens of critical international relations theories and international relations, that's colonization. When you have buildings, infrastructures, big screen TVs, airplanes flying in and out of a region with ships and flights and trucks and food services and personnel, electricity, plumbing, that is colonization. And I foresee a crisis. The ice is melting, and we could hit a moment in time where we see a rush into the region if the climate continues to warm. Now, here's the core problem from my perspective. The ATS system is fragile because, one, the treaty only froze territorial claims in 1959. It just froze them. It didn't nullify them. It didn't reinforce them. It just froze it to the future. Second, the Madrid Protocol is scheduled to be reviewed in 2048. That's coming up pretty soon. And then third, the rapidly melting ice. So there are theories available. Scholars have analyzed what went wrong in humanity's past with colonization, with development. How did the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Why do we have the first world, second world, third world, and fourth world? The analysis is there, rich intellectual contributions on the shelves of libraries gathering dust. So I propose we start applying some of that information and knowledge to something that hasn't happened in a tragic manner yet, and therefore we can possibly prevent repeating patterns of history. We've got to bring in the subjugated knowledge, for example, critical theory, critical international relations. Science tends to be privileged in this arena. When you talk about funding, who gets their conference trips paid for and who doesn't, who gets jobs paying a certain amount of money and who doesn't, etc. Disciplines, there's a hierarchy of disciplines. We need to be willing to make changes in that. So here's how it works. It is possible to look at the legal footprints that have already been laid in treaties, laws, protocols, etc., and predetermine potentially exploitive outcomes. I profess that every person, irrespective of your discipline, can learn to perform legal research because there's a lot of hidden information there. For example, historically, there was something called terra nullius and something called terra communis. And when it comes to outer space, Antarctica and some parts of the Arctic, for example, the Arctic Ocean, we see those provisions are there. Humanity agreed that somehow certain regions of the world should be owned and enjoyed and protected by all of humanity, not just a few who have a tendency to grab and destroy. And so these provisions will silently be undercut and underrun. One main way is the disrespect for international law. International law tends to be seen as, oh, yeah, world peace, that's great. We must change that attitude and shift the ideology so that we can all have a better, more just, equal, and environmentally friendly future. The stakes are high. We can change the world. We don't have to sit back and witness the same old story repeating. We can cultivate global citizenship, and we can reject exploitation, and we can trigger that rejection. All right, so our next panelist will be Jennifer. Are you ready? Jennifer?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm using my headset at work.
Okay.
I was trying to see. So yeah, I work for the International Baccalaureate District for Dallas ISD in here in Dallas, Texas of the USA. And my work mainly is going to be dealing with how do we get our students to prepare for jobs that don't exist yet, for problems that haven't even been a problem yet. And we know with the fact that Antarctica is melting, looking through this IB educator lens, and knowing that we have to have this call to the future of problem solvers, this is exactly what fits into like the IP inquiry. We want to make sure that we provide these global contexts for our students. We want to make sure that it requires them to go through the powers, the systems, the ethics, and responsibility. When I redo our primary years program from the littles that are understanding how we share this planet and how we go all the way up through the middle years program to the diploma program and speak to them through this theory of knowledge course, through the fact that they have to understand they have a shared responsibility to the planet. That's what our teachers are all doing. They're creating like this transdisciplinary unit planner that allows them to see the bigger picture. Because again, we have to apply these approaches to learning skills. We have to understand that in order to solve this like Antarctic crisis, they have to be involved in science. They have to be involved in the humanities, dynamics that have this like biodiversity loss with international law, and understand that in high school, they have all these different pathways, but what are they going to use when we don't have these problems yet? How are they going to be aware that there's a bigger world than just their community that they serve here? So we look at different learner profile traits that will say, we're going to call you into action. We're going to be knowledgeable, developing them to be thinkers that is going to question the dominant narratives of how are we principled and being a champion of global equity and making sure that they are identifying that we're introducing like this legal ultrasound, right? So we're saying that there's this hidden power dynamics. There is this ultrasound forces that students question, how do we know what we know? How do we challenge the certainty of the international law by exposing the difference between things that are changing and things that are fixed? The critical thinking skills, this proactive shift that allows us to be proactive and not reactive. Instead of just waiting for the mineral ban to expire in 2048, we need to teach them, hey, using the Nell Fogato's concept of revising the seed to internationally imagine and build a future of the peace today. So basically, in essence, we want to understand like the future of problem solving through this international baccalaureate lens is allowing them to see, hey, right now it could be a problem, but we have to think of the future. How are we going to grow these kids up to be global productive citizens, to understand that future jobs in Antarctica are probably going to be something like global equity arbitrators and Antarctic biosecurity ethicists? And what's the leverage? Do these transdisciplinary and this concept-based learning and then this interconnection, the cross-curricular connections that we provide in our IB education to understand that we're gonna have to understand what's this model of peace and collaborative and environmental stewardship that that the students understand how they're going to share the world too. So we got to prepare our students just to be architects of the Antarctica's next just future.
to us the way she intersects her knowledge of environmental sustainability with law.
I believe that you called upon me. You cut out a little bit at the beginning, but just want to make sure.
Okay. Yes, I did.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for introducing me. As Dr. Weeks said, my name is Ellery Salek. I'm a law student at American University, Washington College of Law, which is located in Washington, D.C. in the US. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's really an honor to be part of this community of scholars who share the same commitment to the preservation of Antarctica. My academic background, just for some context, is rooted really in the intersection of international law, environmental policy, and geopolitical strategy. And I spent time analyzing the very complex relationship between legal frameworks and the political and economic forces that influence and shape them. And my research with Dr. Weeks has led to a couple of realizations. The biggest one being the existence of the law on paper doesn't actually mean that nations comply. Despite a vast network of these international agreements to address climate change and environmental degradation, we continue to see noncompliance, which leads to ongoing crises like melting polar ice, rising sea levels, resource exploitation, all of the things that we've touched on today. And these phenomena often behave as multiplier effects, which just exacerbate global inequality, conflict, humanitarian crises, which are already very prevalent. So my goal really is to understand the politics behind why states choose to not comply and find ways to build more resilience and effective legal systems. And this perspective is really what motivated my research on the Antarctic Treaty System, the ATS, which is an incredible achievement. It successfully put geopolitical conflict, I guess you could say, on ice by freezing the territorial claims and turned an entire continent into a global reserve for peace and science. However, as we gather today here, we know that the ice is melting. Antarctica is at a critical juncture, and the very elements that have kept it safe, like the vast inaccessible ice and the strategic ambiguity of the ATS itself, are being challenged by climate change. So as the ice melts, it reveals potential for resource exploitation, right? So valuable minerals like silver, copper, gold are coming to Earth, are being unearthed, and new shipping routes are also emerging because of climate change, which could lead to significant economic and political developments in the region. And this transformation is really what I call the pre-colonization phase, where what appears to be benign scientific or even touristic activities are actually the beginning of geopolitical control, the seeds. And this is a form of what legal scholars might call creeping jurisdiction, which is subtle strategic moves that kind of lay the groundwork for future territorial claims. And this is a pattern we've seen before in the history of territorial expansion and the rush to exploit new frontiers like outer space, as Dr. Weeks mentioned. The legal ambiguity of Antarctica, so the tension between the terra nullius, or the unowned land, and then the terra communis, which is land collectively owned by humanity, reflects this deep-seated power struggle. And the ATS really rests on a precarious political foundation, you could say. The 1959 treaty, neither recognized nor denied existing claims. So there was kind of a lot of a lack of clarity there. Um, and the 1991 Madrid Protocol, with its 50-year ban on mineral resource activities, as has been mentioned before, provides a critical layer of environmental protection. But the ban, as we've noted, is subject to review in 2048, and the underlying territorial ambitions still persist. Those won't go away. So the central concern is that Antarctica's future could ultimately be decided by economic agreements or even military decisions rather than law, rather than something we all decide together. And this is where the real work begins. And it's a challenge I think our generation of scholars and policymakers must address and are uniquely positioned to address. And as been mentioned before, we really can't afford to be reactive. We have to go beyond just seeing the melting ice as a sign of climate disaster and instead view it as a catalyst for collaborative innovation. The crisis itself is an opportunity for us to design a new path forward, and we should think of it that way. So I propose we take a more proactive approach to strengthening the ATS, which involves applying what Dr. Weeks mentioned before, the legal ultrasound idea, which is a way to detect hidden power dynamics and emergent threats before they escalate and it becomes too late. And this method, which was inspired by critical legal theory and post-colonial studies, allows us to see the legal footprints and how they might just even predetermine outcomes like exploitation and perpetuate historical patterns of inequality that we've been seeing throughout really the beginning of humanity. And so, using this framework, we can actively build international systems where ethical agreements are supported by strong, verifiable commitments. It's really an opportunity for us to be part of writing a new history of frontiers, one defined by peaceful collaboration and equity, not by exploitation. And the mission is not simply to protect Antarctica from harm, but to transform its governance into an unbreakable model of global governance for all humanity, not just specific actors or nations. And so here we really have the chance to create a new reality for Antarctica, a cooperative one where resources benefit all of humanity and science, and we can replace the belief that peace is just an illusion or a fantasy with the idea that peace is actually a manifest destiny born from collective commitment to shared stewardship over the environment, over Antarctica, over shared spaces. And so this is a call to embody a cooperative Antarctica and cultivate a global citizenship that rejects exploitation. The stakes are immense. The responsibility falls to us to ensure that the continent remains a model for peace, collaboration, environmental stewardship, and by working together to proactively transform its governance and prevent future conflict, we can ensure that Antarctica's future is grounded in the principles of global justice, Earth jurisprudence, and the rights of nature as well.
Well, thank you so much. Marissa, how about you go next? Nice to see you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
So, thank you, Professor Weeks, for inviting me to be part of this panel. It is a pleasure and, of course, a deep honor to be here today. My name is Marisa de las Nieves Delgado. I am the first woman born in Antarctica and president of Native Antarcticans Foundation. The Native Antarcticans Foundation is a nonprofit organization funded by Native Antarcticans and created to promote awareness of Antarctic identity, heritage, and the human dimension of the continent. Our mission is to foster dialogue between science, culture, and community to humanize Antarctica through education, art, and interdisciplinary collaboration, while upholding the principles of peace and environmental stewardship that define the Antarctic Treaty. It is my hope that this panel, Uncovering Hidden Power and Charting a Just Future for Antarctica, will lead us toward an Antarctica that is not only protected and scientifically understood, but also humanly acknowledged. An Antarctica that values both knowledge and empathy, that embraces its symbolic and living communities, and that reflects our shared responsibility for peace and preservation. Among the world's population of around 8 billion people, only 11 share a same birthplace, Antarctica. I would like to start with a brief background. Since 1904, the Argentine Republic has maintained a continuous scientific presence in Antarctica. When the first permanent scientific station was established on Lori Island, in Orcadas del Sur Islands. Since then, this activity has been sustained without interruption, positioning Argentina as a top pioneer in the exploration and study of the White Continent, and marking a historic commitment to research and peace in the region. In the mid-40s, Argentine General Hernán Pujato developed an Antarctic plan, which was implemented during the democratic government of Juan Domingo Perón. However, due to political circumstances, one of its goals, the establishment of a family settlement, would not come to realization until years later. In 1978, a few families were relocated to Base Esperanza, founding 14 Sargento Cabral. This became the only settlement of its kind on the entire continent, until the creation of Villa Las Estrellas at the Chilean-based Presidente Frei Montalva 6 years later. As a result of this chapter in the history of the White Continent, between 1978 and 1985, 11 women gave birth in Antarctica. Their children remain, to this day, the only Navy human beings ever recorded on the continent. The establishment of that first Antarctic hamlet, a historical, factual event, gave rise to a unique community, the native Antarcticans, people whose identity is intertwined with Antarctica itself. As we are all well aware, the Antarctic Treaty System ensures that all activities on the continent are conducted exclusively for peaceful and scientific purposes. Birth, as part of human nature, is a natural and biological event. Therefore, the fact that children were born there does not, in any way, contradict the principles of the treaty. On the contrary, family life and the occurrence of births on Antarctica soil can coexist with scientific endeavors, reflecting the full spectrum of human experience within the continent's unique framework. However, the exclusion of native Antarcticans from legal, academic, and diplomatic frameworks that regulate activities in Antarctica remains evident. This exclusion results, in part, from the structural rigidity of the Antarctic system. The treaty and its associated instruments focus on the demilitarization, science, and environmental protection. Yet, they deliberately omit any reference to population, citizenship, or cultural belonging. What was once a wise strategy to avoid sovereignty disputes has now become a barrier preventing the recognition of legitimate human realities. Recognizing human realities requires rethinking the conceptual boundaries of the treaty system. The absence of references to population or culture may have been necessary in 1959, but 6 decades later, the context has evolved. Human presence in Antarctica is no longer limited to temporary missions. It now includes the life experiences of those born there. Individuals whose very existence embodies the intersection between life, science, and policy. The recognition does not challenge the treaty. Rather, it broadens its moral and symbolic scope. inviting the international community to consider how human experience can coexist with peace, science, and environmental protection. In this sense, the inclusion of the native Antarctican community is not a rupture. It is an evolution toward a more humanized understanding of the Antarctic continent. When analyzing the ideas presented in the work Antarctica and the Humanities, a profound dilemma emerges. On one hand, there is a tendency to construct a community of observers, researchers, scientists, and workers, who develop emotional bonds with Antarctica through their temporary activity. On the other hand, this perspective tends to undervalue the native Antarctican community, real individuals born on the continent, whose bond with Antarctic soil is existential and irreplaceable. Let us pause for a moment to recall the strict definition of native, derived from the Latin nativus, meaning born in a place. This tension is not trivial. While the community of observers builds its Antarctic identity through acquired experience and shared imaginaries, native Antarcticans embody a primary existential identity, one that transcends choice or profession. Although there is no such thing as Antarctic citizenship, it is possible to distinguish between Antarcticans by birth, those born on the continent, and those connected through professional or symbolic engagement. Therefore, following not only etymological logic, but also sociological, anthropological, and legal reasoning, the term Antarctican should be nuanced according to the source of one's bond with the continent. Working in Antarctica represents an acquired and circumstantial connection, whereas being born there implies a primary and an inalienable tie. Recognizing native Antarcticans is not a political act in the classical sense. It is an ethical and epistemological act. It means allowing who were born on the white continent within context of peace, science, and community to transmit to their descendants a legacy of symbolic citizenship. From sociology and interpretative anthropology, we understand that those born in Antarctica establish an existential and foundational bond with the continent. Their connection is neither voluntary nor functional, but ontological. In contrast, those who work temporarily in Antarctica stations develop a professional connection, meaningful, yet fundamentally distinct from the experience of nativity. From the perspective of international law, Article 4 of the 1959 Antarctic Treaty declares that no acts or activities taking place while the present treaty is in force shall constitute a basis for asserting, supporting, or denying a claim to territorial sovereignty in Antarctica. As legal scholar Marcelo Cohen notes, the Antarctic space lacks both sovereignty and nationality, yet it doesn't lack symbolic significance. For native Antarcticans, the experience of being born on a continent long described as uninhabited places them in a singular position from which to rethink belonging. Their identity is not based on ancient territorial occupation, but emerges through family memory, embodied experience, affecting narratives, and an ethics of care tied to the land. This Antarctic identity, transnational, immediate, natural, and inalienable, constitutes the sui generis condition of the native Antarctican community. It represents a new category of human belonging that both coexists with and transcends the legal framework of the treaty, inviting a more human-centered understanding of presence on the Antarctic continent. When asked, where were you born? Most people answer without hesitation. But for native Antarcticans, the answer is never simple. The adjective gentilic, from the Latin gentilicium, denotes belonging to a gens, a people or place of origin, implying a primary bond between person and territory. In this sense, a gentilic does not merely indicate geographical provenance, it expresses viral belonging. Sociology reminds us that the collective identity is forged in memory and origin, and that birth within a territory is one of the deepest markers of identity. Anthropology goes further. Belonging to a territory becomes a sign of the social self when the place of origin coincides with the very beginning of existence. From this perspective, the term Antarctican can be understood as a gentilic sui generis, one that arises not from history of sovereignty, but from the extraordinary reality of being born in a territory without nationality. Its legitimacy comes not from law, but from life itself. And so, from this linguistic, anthropological, and human perspective, we arrive at the simple but profound truth that being Antarctican is not merely a matter of presence, it is a matter of origin. In conclusion, the consolidation of the symbolic Antarctic community must acknowledge the existential hierarchy between these two sources of belonging, safeguarding the specificity and irreplaceable value of nativity. Given this reality, it becomes imperative to advance proposals for the symbolic and political inclusion of the native Antarctican community, proposals that do not contradict the spirit of the treaty, but rather expand its scope toward a more humanized, inclusive, and ethical vision of the continent. May this reflection remind us that the future of Antarctica is not written only in scientific reports or diplomatic treaties, but also in the silent legacy of those who first gave it life. An Antarctica that unites peace, science, and humanity. A continent that, while governed by law, still holds the heartbeat of human existence. Thank you.
The police is here, Mom. The police is outside. There's some attack just for
We can hear you, Dr. Wicks.
Dr. Weeks, this is Elvira, and hello, everyone. I think it's my turn. I assume Dr. Weeks wants me to continue, and thank you, everyone, for being here. And I'm honored to be here with all of you and bring my perspective on what I always share with Dr. Weeks through my work at Webster University Faculty Development Center. And I will share with you briefly my slides here. I hope I can do that successfully. And I hope that you all can see that, right? Okay. Well, again, good afternoon. My name is Elvira, and I want to say thank you to other panelists for providing a compelling theoretical framework for tackling battle for the seventh continent. We've heard that they identify the threats, such as creeping jurisdiction, and the foundational solutions like our jurisprudence. And my role as instructional design specialist is focused on global outreach, is to pivot from what to the how. Once you have brilliant critical research, how do you ensure the world not only hears it, but is moved to act on it? This is what I do at university. So, as we know from this community, which is sitting on critical knowledge with the need to protect the Antarctic commons, but we know that 20,000 word paper, however great, groundbreaking, often remains siloed. My professional mission is to use instructional design, digital communication, and humanitarian perspective, honed through my work with organizations like WHO, World Health Organization, to close the gap between specialized academic knowledge and global policy impact. My expertise is in helping you translate knowledge into action. This isn't just about sharing a PDF, it's about building an informed, mobilized global citizenry. And here is a 4-step digital strategy to ensure your research on Antarctica in time of change, achieving maximum global reach and impact. As we can see here on this strategy, there is a content design for specific digital platform. Then we need to optimize content for research, for search and engagement, then distribute strategically across global channels, analyze performance for continuous improvement. Your research on Atlantic Treaty System, post-colonial theory, or indigenous knowledge directly aligns with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically SDG 17, such as peace, justice, and strong institutions and global citizenship education. The challenge is that your complex theoretical findings are inaccessible to policymakers and high school students. The strategy, create Antarctic seed as a micro lesson. It can take just one core finding, for instance, your analysis of tension between terra nullius and terra communis, and transform it into a focused 90-minute online module. This module must use clear learning objective and a final assessment that aligns with the goal of global citizenship. For example, design a counter-narrative to a nation's justification for increased Antarctic presence. The outcome can be by housing this module in a simple platform like a Moodle or Canvas. This single piece of content could be shared then with thousands of educators globally, creating an informed electorate, and you will become an educator on a global scale. Your scholarship is a critical global resource. Your online presence needs to reflect this power, moving beyond a simple list of publications. The challenge is a siloed research page on a university website, which fails to connect with the policy, media, or the public. The strategy would be to establish your Scholars Hub. This personal website or institutional microsite should be a hub designed explicitly for 3 audiences: peers with easy access to download papers, media policy with quick access to infographics and data visualizations, and students public with access to your micro lessons from strategy 1. Making sure we don't bury your lead. Feature your highest impact, including finding prominently, like use a companion banner that instantly communicates your work, like mapping geopolitical risk in Antarctica with legal ultrasound. Finally, by ensuring your hub clearly linking your work to this community and relevant SDG goals. This instantly would validate your research as a part of collective global mission. This community is a global community. but geopolitical concerns and logistics limit in-person meetings. Cross-cultural and real-time collaboration is vital. The challenge is moving beyond static PDFs to dynamic, intercultural knowledge sharing. And the strategy would be to transform seminars into global live streams, stop viewing Zoom, Google Meet, or WebEx as just meeting platforms. Yes, they are powerful broadcast studios. You can use your instructional designer skills to help scholars deliver their complex theoretical work and highly interactive live streams. Drawing on my WHO humanitarian experience, I remember need for translation. Using a Q&A feature, collecting questions in multiple languages, and also being mindful of logistics might be helpful. Scheduling those streams to accommodate different time zones, alternating between different parts of the world, and using some short form videos. And not treating just YouTube as a live stream, but also as distribution engine, and creating maybe 90-second animated explainers of your research abstracts. Like, what is our jurisprudence in 90 seconds? Making sure that they also have closed caption and at least three major languages. The final step is translating academic insight into advocacy and driving grassroots support and principles of environmental justice, moving beyond a reactive stance to proactive one. The challenge is inspiring individual action from a remote academic conference. And the strategy to micro-campaign based on your research and your legal ultrasound finding, identifying one specific leverageable policy outcome. Is it pressuring tourism operators? Is it advocating for a specific NGO proposal? We must clearly define the target. Creating a clear three-part campaign centered on your research. First, by educating with 1-minute video that states the problem simply, like creeping jurisdiction in threatening the Ross Sea. Second, move to act with a one-click link that share the solutions simply, like email your foreign minister, supporting stronger environmental enforcement. And finally, share with a shareable graphic to build community, like join the global call to protect the Antarctic Commons. You can then harness social media like Twitter, LinkedIn, to deliver this campaign directly to your target audiences, policymakers, and professional communities who have the power to influence change. By adopting these 4 strategies, by creating modular content, building a robust scholar hub, mastering global live streams, and mobilizing through targeted advocacy, you can transform your critical research into a powerful mobilized force. We can ensure that this community is not just reporting on change, but is actively driving it, securing a just, equitable, and sustainable future for Antarctica. Thank you very much.
About now, can you hear me now? Yes, okay, all right. All right, well, we've given the audience a lot of interesting things to think about, and I would like to share my screen. to give the audience a few more things, interesting things to think about. Maps exist already. Again, I get a lot of feedback from peers, reviewers, Antarctica scholars who seem to enjoy telling me, oh, you can't use the word colonization for Antarctica. However, maps exist, so many maps showing the carving up of the territory. I know the Antarctic Treaty System temporarily put those claims on hold. But there are about 70 bases owned and managed and controlled by about 34, 36 countries. Even countries, for example, Peru, they have an Arctic base called Machu Picchu, and on and on and on. India, countries that most people are surprised have bases in Antarctica. Here's a commercial. I'm just going to show a few seconds clip. Commercial for tourism in Antarctica. So beautiful. Speaking of enigmatic, international law is considered to be puzzling. Oh, why don't nations follow international law? After all, international law is just politics. This needs to change. We can trigger an ideological shift towards actually respecting international law. Otherwise, we risk repeating this history. A few people making decisions about land and territory that belong to a wider range of people. These territories then get limited, only a few can access them, and eventually conflict, disillusionment, etc., inequality, environmental degradation tend to follow as a pattern. This continent or this country may seem familiar. Can anyone tell me what country this is? Well, at one time, rather than New York or California or Arizona, these territories were known as Blackfoot, Shawnee, Cherokee, Choctaw, Apache, etc. And that wasn't very long ago. So colonization does happen. This country, my country, the United States of America, began as 13 ragtag colonies forming on the eastern shore of this region. Maps exist. Just do a search on Antarctica maps and you'll see what I mean. And Antarctica's melting, and it's beautiful. How long do you think it will be before more and more people start finding ways to go in there? Ships, flights, boats, all sorts of activities are happening now. Bases, so many buildings, multi-million-dollar architectural structures are already built in the region. We don't want to see this in the pristine Antarctica territory. The temporary nature, in my mind, of the treaty and the legal system needs to be addressed today. It's fragile. I had Gemini create an image. 250,000 international agreements, treaties, protocols, etc. Great stuff. It's already on the books. You have the law on your side. For those who want, you don't have to get assassinated arguing for a law. You have the law on your side. Stand up for it. If there are approximately 30 some odd countries with bases and footholds in Antarctica, that leaves out the majority of nations. Because as we know, there are nearly 200 nations in the world. So what about those nations? Are they going to be cut out? So we're not supposed to question this. I realize that I'm doing the taboo. However, that's okay. Because I believe we can change the world for future generations. We don't have to go down the same road as we venture into new territories, outer space, Antarctica, and the Arctic. Thank you for your attention. I hope you all heard me. Did everybody hear those wonderful words? Okay. And so I guess that ends our session. Thank you, members of the panel. I appreciate this so much. Thank you so much. Oh, we'll open it up for questions now. Does anyone have any questions? No, moderator? Looks like we completed our mission. And thank you, audience. And yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was a really good panel. Since there are not any questions and we have 3 more minutes, any of you have any final words so we can close this segment?
Question for Marissa. Marissa, did you live in a house when were you born in a hospital or in a house in Antarctica?
The settlement, the hamlet. I was my family lived in a house. It was a small neighborhood of only 5 family houses, and there is a big main building where the chief of the station lives. The main kitchen is where the community activities occur, and also there was there the medical office at that time. So I was born in that medical office. Now, of course, almost 50 years later, there is a building like a clinic, as a clinic in Base Esperanza. It's not, of course, it's bigger, and has 11 family houses right now, and other dwellings. But when the first time I was only in total maybe 8 buildings in the base.
Just under the auspices of
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
which country was the hamlet under the auspices of?
Argentina.
Okay, Argentina. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ellen, you have your hand raised. you would like to?
Yes, thanks. Hola Marisa, la presentación tuya fue fascinante. Me encantó por completo. Edith, great presentation as well. I apologize for arriving a little bit late to this session. I would have loved to hear the whole thing. So I just want to thank you all for the parts that I got to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, it's at the close of our session now, and thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your presentations. Now, before we continue with the next ones, we would like to remind you that each speaker has 12 minutes for their presentation, and when there is 1 minute remaining, we will let them know so they can wrap it up. After both speakers have finished, sorry, there's a timer. Now, continuing with what I was saying, when there is a minute remaining, we will let them know. And after both speakers have finished, there will be a 6-minute time for questions and answers. And we ask everyone to be mindful of their time, as once the session concludes, we must move on to the next block. And with that, we would like to welcome Elizabeth Lewis with the presentation Voices of the Southern Ocean. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Hello, am I audible?
I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
And you don't need to see me, so that's fine. So I would like to thank you all for coming along to this presentation, which will be a sharing of some work in progress, early poems from a project I'm working on with the marine ecologist Jen Freer from British Antarctic Survey. It's called Voices of the Southern Ocean. And what we hope to do in this project is combine storytelling strategies of myth with the language of science to tell some of the more than human and human stories of the Southern Ocean. As I say, it's very early work. The poems are still finding forms, the voices are finding form, and it will be a while before I have a real sense of how the collected piece will look. So any thoughts you have on the work I share this evening would be very welcome. So who are the characters that we're looking at in this poetic drama? We have as our, I guess, our demigods, or we call them the controllers, the forces such as currents, the sun and the moon, that control the sort of ocean system and the earth system. We have a group called the Seekers, who are the observers, the people hunting for knowledge, for information of some sort. They are the scientists. We have the whales, and we also have the sort of the machines, the robots that are seeking information, collecting data. And another group, the sentinels, species like albatross or krill or diatoms, which tell us something about the impacts of climate change over large timescales. There are other creatures and characters in this world too, but these are the sort of main groups. And our antagonist, if you like, is climate change, dispersed and evident only in the sort of impacts it has in the world of the Southern Ocean. I'm going to just hand over, if you like, to Jen Freer to say a little bit about the role of the scientific observer before reading some poems.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Freer and I'm a scientist at the British Antarctic Survey. and I wanted to say a little bit more about the role of the scientific observer in this context. As Antarctic scientists, we are often in a very privileged position to be able to witness the Antarctic and Antarctic processes firsthand during expeditions, such as the 8-week-long cruise that I was part of at the beginning of this year. Of course, we were there to collect data, whether that is in the form of autonomous instruments, nets, water samples, or experimental work on board. But we are still human. There are still highs and lows throughout the trip. We cannot help but connect with and wonder at the environment around us. For example, we cannot help but notice the love heart shape of krill in this swarm showing up on the echogram, which, by the way, just so happened to coincide with Valentine's Day. So acknowledging the highs and lows and acknowledging the wonder of the environment, this was where poems and poetry fed into our days on board.
I'd like now to read Krill Valentine. These are Jen's haiku, giving a sense both of the relationship with ocean creatures and the anticipation that surrounds the start of research. Krill Valentine, we gave you our heart, but at the very next wave, you scooped us away. 2 recoveries, one orange, another blue, both hold secrets close. Questions, unfinished bodies wait for the ocean to shape their shadows.
Hi everyone.
And now the next 2 poems are different forms of origin stories. They belong to a longer sequence that hasn't been fully written yet. In the beginning, it is time, said the dying star, whirling darkness into energy, feeling his great heart heating, fusing and forming and fusing, a pulsing of light, something like love furling outwards, radiant, hurtling into elements. Carbon, stonecutter, fire fuel, hydrogen, water maker, energy carrier. We are the elementals, phosphorus, matchlight, sulfur, yellow stink. We are the elementals, star-formed. Nitrogen, life giver, oxygen, breath maker. We are the elementals, the stuff of life. And this poem, presented here on screen in Spanish, tells the story of the moon's gift. It's translated by Angela Posada Swofford, and I hope in the future that all the poems will translate together. The moon's gift. What will you give? Asked father son, with only half his mind attending as he watched his people scuttle and fret below him. The moon brooded on her response, spinning and spinning the sun's reflected light into silver threads, letting its soft weight spill through her fingers. She sensed fear in the click and chatter of the people as they gathered, stars too far to comfort them in all this space. What will be my gift? She asked herself, still spinning, light falling earthwards, drawing the seas towards her and away as she spun. What do I have for these frightened people which will hold them? And then as she spun, she began to understand the possibilities encompassed in her own light. From icicle gleams and ghost light of snow, from ripples of lake and rain on rock, from strands of streams and tumbling falls, she made these pictured things. A hollow stone, a basket for fruit, a net for fish, a sack for oats, the story woven to contain them all. And somewhere in this, there is a poet weaving things together from the Northern Hemisphere. And this project intersects with another in which the jaguar travels from the Amazon to the Antarctic. And this idea of the jaguar, the shaman's spirit, is something which is helpful in terms of allowing my imagination or the poet's imagination to travel. From the heart of the mountain, I send my spirit south over oceans, and in the sky, water vapor gathers into dapples of cloud pelt, poised for the leap, a slash of lightning, and she's loose, falling into a hurtling of rain, a spattering of droplets, a spinning of bubbles, tumbling and roiled and rolling with the waves. In the mountain, the man stands with eyes closed, listening as rainwater drips and jaguar, gaze arrowed, salt-fanged, rearing and roaring, dives still further into the deep, where the glacier was grounded. He dreams a language of lines, its laddered pathways, a lexicon of transverse ribs and gullies, of kettle pits and sediment fans. In the steady intonations of the tide, he hears the giant's pulse, the rise and fall of its icy body printed in pebble and clay, and then he follows the windings of a subtle snake along its submarine migrations, watches as it stops and startles, understands the semantics of retreat. And here's a different kind of conversation, thermohaline circulation. Under the sea ice, a serpent spools. Said the glacier to the sea, "You have carried here a worrying of hot little tongues." Said the sea to the glacier, "It's beyond my control." Salt water, density, somersaulting down. Said the sea to the sea ice, "Where have you been?" Said the sea ice to the sea, "I've been waiting for the cold." Listening in the meltwater, the serpent slows. The serpent slows. And finally, thinking about a different form of imagination gatherer, one of the seekers, the satellite, and a love song from the satellite to A68, written in the form of a fib based on the Fibonacci series of numbers, which I thought was an appropriate way to express the sort of instruments. Love. Love. He's talking to Iceberg A68. Love, I'm programmed. Every day I picture your face, your shape, circle the earth, return. I have tracked you from Mother Shelf to Iceberg, the 6th largest on record, 5,719 kilometers squared. 2 years you stayed close. Then I turned northwards. I saw you pass, love, through Iceberg Alley, clocked the loss of 7 meters every month to the sea, a total of 152 billion tons of fresh water and nutrients, watched as you broke up close to South Georgia. Someone will write your influence. I will bear witness to you. So that's just a sample. I have written a few more poems, and there are a whole lot more to write. I'm just beginning to realize quite how ambitious this project is, trying to encompass the vast scales and forces of the Southern Ocean. But it's great fun, and I'd really welcome any comments that you might have or any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your presentation. The questions will be after the next presentation, so that's when we will let you know any comments about it, but it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And now we will continue with Ellen Christmas on pole dancing and skinny dipping, exotic entertainment in Antarctica. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. If I'm able to put the video on, if that's possible. If not, that's okay.
Excuse me, what?
If you could turn on the video for me. I'm blocked from putting on a. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great to see everyone. Elizabeth, that was amazing. I will share my screen. Perfect. Okay. And get it going. All right. So, pole dancing and skinny dipping, exotic entertainment on Antarctica. While Antarctica is typically associated with scientific research, environmental conservation, and extreme weather, the human presence on the continent has always brought with it a need for leisure and morale-boosting activities. This paper explores the tongue-in-cheek yet culturally relevant and revealing phenomenon of exotic entertainment in Antarctica, framed here through the two symbolic extremes, pole dancing and skinny dipping. Drawing upon expedition diaries, oral histories, and contemporary accounts from research stations, this study examines how playful, risque, and often absurd acts of performance and recreation emerge in one of the world's most inhospitable environments. Pole dancing is interpreted both literally as dances and theatrical performances improvised around ship masts or station poles or poles, and metaphorically as the art of turning environmental hardship into spectacle. Skinny dipping, meanwhile, serves as shorthand for spontaneous, high-risk aquatic plunges into sub-zero waters, often performed as initiation rites or markers of personal endurance. These activities, while appearing frivolous, reveal deeper themes: the psychological adaptation of isolated communities, the negotiation of identity in extreme spaces, and the creation of shared folklore that blurs the line between myth and memory. This paper argues that such exotic entertainment is not merely escapist, but a vital part of human survival in polar frontiers, transforming the coldest place on Earth into a stage for humor, camaraderie, and the defiance of environmental limits. So, what is polar leisure? How do you spend your free time? What do most Antarctic scientists, researchers, and workers do in their spare time to entertain themselves? We've probably all read about the bowling alley at McMurdo Station, the makeshift bars at various bases across Antarctica, including Club 90 Degrees South at the South Pole Amundsen Scott Station. But don't forget about Amundsen and his men, later Shackleton and his men, his crew, and all the other expedition crews that have traveled. You have Here's a Toast on during Shackleton's Imperial Transantarctic Expedition. We all know that now they have the internet to entertain the scientists, the staff, and others on their way to Antarctica. But there have always also been books to read if you brought them with you. To kick us off about exotic entertainment, we can speculate about what kinds of books or magazines people bring to Antarctica. This is part of Scott's library aboard his ship, the Discovery. It's known that Scott also prepared his National Antarctic Expedition Library, including, it's a PDF file on the internet now, but it's his catalog. It's 34 pages long. And the titles are divided by genre and interest. And surely enough, you can see down here, Shakespeare went to Antarctica. Some of you might recall my paper at the conference 2 years ago about Shakespeare on Antarctica. Well, on that same Discovery expedition, we have the founding of the South Polar Times, with Shackleton serving as the first editor, as some of you might know. Some people think that Shackleton's greatest contribution on that expedition was keeping the crew occupied and entertained with the South Polar Times. He tried to publish this newspaper magazine at least once a month, inviting the men to submit scientific articles, stories, poems, drawings, and jokes. On this and many of the early expeditions to Antarctica, the crews would put on plays. There would be sing-alongs. Men would compose sledging songs to use when they would be sledging later. There was a piano aboard the Discovery. There were games. People played sports, hockey, soccer. Some countries call it football, soccer, on the ice, as well as feasts for birthdays, celebrations, holidays, such as Midwinter's Eve. More on that soon. There were also, in the earliest known theater production, for example, was on 25th of June, 1902 in the Discovery Hut on Ross Island. And those cruise members, among Scott's expedition, they performed Watts Phillips's 1862 play, A Ticket of Leave. It's a Victorian farce, and at least one man, you can see in the photograph here, played a female role. So obviously theater has continued in Antarctica, often performed by scientists and staff at the various research bases. There are impromptu performances, informal theatrical productions, and countless creative endeavors, as documented in such films as the great one, Antarctica: A Year on Ice. Before I move on to pole dancing and skinny dipping, I want to explain what initially attracted me to this idea, other than the fun of putting pole dancing on my CV, not under work experience, just under this presentation. I teach a course on anthropological linguistics at this university, and I'm intrigued by the term and the concept, the theory of liminality. It has its origin in etymological origin in Latin, which means the word is limen or limen, which means threshold. So in a rite of passage, there are 3 stages: pre-ritual, the middle stage, and the status held upon completion of that ritual. So liminality is the ambiguity, the disorientation that occurs during that middle stage. When that participant is literally standing on the threshold between their prior identity, time or place, or even community, such as Antarctica, and the new one that they're about to, once they have accomplished that rite of passage. So this concept, theory of liminality, was first developed in the early 20th century by the German folklorist Arnold van Gennep. And he published about this in his book in 1909 called The Rites of Passage. And he explores liminality within the context of rites of passage in small societies, small scale societies. So obviously an Antarctic research station is perfect for this. Well, that leads us to pole dancing. So here we'll examine the transformation of navigational and symbolic poles into performance apparatus, blurring that boundary between scientific monument and theatrical prop. The first pole that always comes up when people think about Antarctica is the South Pole. Probably most of you know that technically there are 2 South Poles, the geographic, which is moved occasionally as the Earth shifts, and the stationary ceremonial pole. Popular holidays such as Christmas, New Year's Eve, and others have special rites of passage at the South Pole. Particularly favorite is the Race Around the World, whereby any kind of transportation is used to travel around the geographic South Pole and thereby through all lines of longitude and all the time zones. Next, these resilient and audacious souls down at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, they have another rite of passage. Some are desperate to join the coveted 300 Club, which refers to the massive temperature difference in Fahrenheit anyway, that a courageous individual will experience by soaking in a steamy sauna and then scurrying outside to circle the geographic South Pole at minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So talk about liminality. How do they feel right before leaving that sauna? So those 300 Club aspirants, they're wearing nothing but boots in a race against frostbite. Happily, pole dancing leads us right into skinny dipping. But first, I want to say make one more point about liminality. Drawing on Victor Turner's concept of liminality. So he's built upon the German we can situate exotic entertainment as a ritual that suspends the normal order of Antarctic life, offering release from the monotony of isolation. Turner posits that if liminality is regarded as a time and place of withdrawal from normal modes of social action, it potentially can be seen as a period of scrutiny for certain central values and axioms of the culture where it's occurring. And to quote Turner directly, the very structure of society is temporarily suspended. Well, this is a good photo right there. To both of them, actually. With all these rites of passage, whether at the South Pole Station or at any of the other bases, or even on Antarctic cruises touring the waters, rituals such as the polar plunge are quite popular. They test the mental and physical mettle. They force one to step far outside of the literal comfort zone. And for some reason, they feel like a huge accomplishment. There's some nice little penguins skinny dipping. Apparently penguins skinny dip too. This tradition is the polar plunge is widely practiced at many coastal stations on Midwinter's Eve, regardless of the operating country. It seems to be very popular. A scientist once claimed his 12-second plunge into the Southern Ocean was transcendent, though he admitted later that he couldn't feel his legs for half an hour. I'm quite sure it was more than half an hour. It seems that there's almost a religious framing of Antarctic swims, basically as initiation rites because of their role in solidifying group cohesion through shared physical shock. As some of you might know, one of my areas of research is also religion of Antarctica, so I'm excited to explore this a little bit more. In sum, I once read in one of the many books I've read about Antarctica, down here, you're either working, sleeping, or inventing dumb ways to stay sane. Essentially, this piece of research is dedicated to documenting that third category. While Antarctica's harsh environment demands physical endurance and technical expertise, it also fosters a unique creative impulse, the drive to turn survival into a performance. I also read in one of these articles or books, if you can make 50 people laugh at the bottom of the world, you're doing more for humanity than other people. Exotic entertainment in Antarctica is not an anomaly, but rather an adaptive cultural mechanism, one that reveals the essential interplay between survival, humor, and performance at the iciest edges of human habitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen, for your presentation. Now we will open the floor for any question that anyone wants to do for both presentations.
Elizabeth, did you write all those poems yourself or with your, oh, they're beautiful, they're incredible.
Well, Jen has written the haiku, so she's going to, the idea at the moment is that the top of the page will have the haiku, which are like note form, and it'll either be like observation in note form at the top of the page, and then there's the ocean underneath is the volume, and there'll be sort of different kinds of height and volume underneath those observations at the top of the page.
That is so incredible. I mean, I know you as an incredible researcher. All the papers you've given, to hear your creative prowess, your expertise with creativity as well. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Because I as I was saying, I feel had this idea and very excited by the idea, but yeah, it's going to take a time, I think.
Well, I know you can do it. Thank you for sharing it. It was amazing.
Thank you for listening. And so what drew you to the pole dancing? Did it start with wordplay? Because I know you love language and playing with words.
Well, I do think that that polar plunge just always sounded crazy to me. And the more in the past decade, the more I've read about Antarctica, and well, Elizabeth, you know me very well with the literature and now religion too. This was just a fun side piece. Am I using that word? Given pole dancing. So I started off for fun, but I do teach in anthropology as well. So this idea of liminality really fit itself in well with this. So just for fun, I put pole dancing and skinny dipping. But it's probably a much bigger area of research than I realized. And quite frankly, the things I've read in many of these books are there. Some of the things people do are astounding. And it's when you tie it in with other critical theories, it makes sense. And it was fun. When I told some of my friends about the slideshow, they wanted to come today. And I did eliminate a few slides since I knew we were on a time limit. My husband, Bob, had fun with them.
I imagine. Did you hear Ellie Lean and her team on the polar plunge?
You know what happened, Elizabeth, I don't think you know this. A year ago, I had to step in as chair of my Department of English and Languages. So I missed all day yesterday. And this morning I had about 100 emails that I simply had to address. This is where it's difficult. If this conference had been in person, that's it. I would have gone to everything. But obviously virtual in a certain way is a little bit easier. You don't have to get on a plane, and that's good for the environment. But so no, I have to email Ellie to apologize, but also I'd love to see what she said. Were you able to go?
Yeah.
It must have been amazing.
It was very good, but it was interesting. You were talking about transformation, and she was talking about as well the polar plunge developing place attachment.
Oh, that's interesting. I will definitely email her later if I don't see her at the business meeting. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks.
Now we will close this section so we can continue with the next presentations. And thank you both again for your beautiful presentations and the poems. And it was a really interesting theme about pole dancing and skinny dipping. Now with Ursula Drack and her presentation about logbooks and ship journals as a valuable sources for science and research, we will continue. Welcome, Ursula.
Thank you. I hope I can share my screen. This isn't it. Sorry. How to share it now? Sorry, I cannot share my screen. I have my screen open.
We are not seeing it.
Yeah, I see only this one, but this is the wrong one. Window. I'm so sorry. I really tried. Sorry, I think I have to do it without my slides. I have it open in the PowerPoint. Here, sorry. Sorry, I'm very, very ill. I have
don't worry, if you want, you can continue only with talking and not with the slides if you cannot share your screen.
I'm so sorry because I really tried now. There's share the screen, but it's only Magdalena, yours. But yeah, more. Yeah. I had already problems this morning to go into the system. Hello? Shall I only start to talk? Magdalena?
If you want, you can start.
Okay.
I put it's supposed that everyone can share their screens, but if not, you can start talking. There's no problem.
Okay, good. Sorry that I have no slides. It was a lot of work, but yeah, maybe the talk makes sense. Yeah, my name is Ursula Rack, and I'm a polar historian who worked together with climate scientists. And I searched for historical logbooks and ship journals in archives and with already scanned material to gather data from these sources. The purpose of studying historic logbooks is to link the past and the future. On the case I worked for, it was for historical weather data, to research historical patterns in weather and to reconstruct the climate for possible future predictions. Today, modern science helps us to gather weather data or snow and ice data with radar and satellites and drones. However, it seems that we cannot compare this historical data because in the way it was gathered, for example, historical thermometers or using a sextant for position taking, only to name a few. But know how the data was collected, scientists can use the data sets for their research. The crucial role of the historian is to interpret the historical data and how it was recorded and collected and translate it for the scientists. It is only one example how it can work. These logbooks from the German expedition, you cannot see it now, unfortunately, in 1873 to 1874 is around the Antarctic Peninsula. It is handwritten, and the table was already a sort of standardized format, which could vary. It depends on the country or the company. This needs a transcription, which is seen in the next piece, what you cannot see, unfortunately. And this whaling and sealing expedition did what was usual for the time. It did not write down the position when it was whaling. You could see it on the slide, but unfortunately. And because it was a trade business. However, there is so much other valuable information you can find, but the scientists were only interested in the, scientists were only interested in the position of the ship and the data such as wind, pressure, rain, snow, fall, and ice coverage. However, Dahlmann, the captain of the Endeavour, did the unthinkable. He published his charts. Here we see Deception Island and the ship route he took and the charted land, the shore he sailed along. The problem of this ship was it had only a weak engine, so penetrating the ice was difficult, but his charts were a start of upcoming expeditions. There are different ways to keep a logbook. Here are 3 examples from the early 19th century from some settler ships to Australia. The first one is written in a book with pages with no lines or tables. It was written by hand, and the position was written down with some additional information on the weather conditions. The second one had already a printed table, but all was written by hand. There's also more information about events and the weather conditions. The third one is kept like a personal diary. Much information on what happened on board, and then within is some weather information. Sometimes the second and the third one could be kept at the same voyage. So there was a multiple logbook keeping or ship diary keeping. Another sort of logbook were the lighthouse logbooks, often on loose papers, sewn or stapled together afterwards. The conditions of the logbooks are often less satisfying, as shown in the second photo, because you see the pages are crumbled and so on. However, these logbooks are often not easily accessible because they were not kept into one place. When the lighthouse was abandoned, the logbook went out with the last tenant and can be found in basements or lofts. However, these sources are very good reference when ships passed by going in and out of the harbor and at which weather conditions. To interpret the information in the logbooks, it needs a sort of dictionary. The measurement units are different to today's. Before official scales such as the Beaufort scale, we can find different interpretations such as light wind, but not how strong. With the introduction of the Beaufort scale, it is exactly described what a light wind is, how strong or how weak. Working with logbooks from different countries which were in the same area to different times or event at the same time can be confusing. How to interpret their description of the weather? On this slide, unfortunately you can see it, are some examples how I can work. I created a list when comparing personal diaries from expedition members. The expeditions were undertaken in 1901 to 1903 by Germany, Britain, Sweden, Scotland, and France. I concentrated on the German and British one. The slide demonstrates, you cannot see it again, that working with logbooks is not straightforward. The accessibility can be already a hurdle. The material is often in bad conditions. Paper is fragile to humidity, mold, and inconsistent temperature. Logbooks always go with the ship. If the ship is sold, the logbooks will go with it. If it ends up in an archive, you can be lucky. Transcribing logbooks is often done by citizen science, meaning 3 to 5 participants get one logbook to transcribe, and a historian is then looking and comparing the versions and will correct where it does not match. The slide shows only a selection of what it means to get a logbook and how to process it. Systems to take measurements changed and advanced over time. However, even with our modern technology, we have to ensure quality control. Interesting for working with logbooks is also to search with instruments were used in the data collecting. That is easier when working with expedition logbooks. I participated in a project about the weather data collection over 50 years in the Indian Ocean between 1870s and 1920s. It turned out that the 3 expeditions in that time frame worked with the same brand of instruments. The data collected with these instruments could so be easily compared to calculate the change in the conditions in the Indian Oceans. On the slide, you can find the article access, what you cannot find, unfortunately. How to work further with the collected and transcribed data. That slide, what you cannot see, shows how it was done in the early 2000s. It was very often hand-typed, then it would try to scan. It was a lot of mistakes in there, but more and better systems were developed over the time. And the quality control is still a big issue when working with these data sets. There were 3 big projects which worked with all sorts of systems to collect historical data, from logbooks and personal diaries. CLIVOC was the European project in 2001 and 2003. Their focus was on British, Dutch, Spanish, French logbooks from 1750s to 1850s. Going further into the past was not feasible because of the way in which data was recorded. The valuable advantage that the project was the dictionary that contained the historical terms used in the logbooks and put next to each other in the 4 languages and what it means in terms today. ECA is still going on in their methods, are still developing further, and their focus is globally and over the last 200 to 250 years on data collections. Reclaim is also still going on, however, with the current US administration, NOAA was shut down, which makes it difficult to retrieve these data. But via other collaborators, some of the data is still accessible.
I'm sorry, Ursula, you have 1 minute left, so...
Working with logbooks is not straightforward, and it needs a certain set of skills to master to extract the data from the historical documents. There are still logbooks out which have not been processed, but it is sometimes luck or persistence to uncover them. This work is almost never ending and very important to reconstruct historical weather data for predicting changes in the climate. Sorry that it doesn't work with the slides. Would be easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ursula, for your presentation. It was really good. And now we will like to introduce you to Pier Paolo Alfei, who will present the United States in Antarctica at the dawn of the Cold War, the Operation High Jump, 1946 to 1947. Welcome, Pierre.
Good evening to everyone. I'm an Italian polar historian with a PhD from the Catholic University of Milan. And firstly, I would like to thank the convener, Luis Valentin Ferrada, and the Academic Planning Committee comprising Ferrada, Peter Roberts, Yelena Yermakova, Hebrew Kaimas, and Carolina Flores. The presentation will outline some first preliminary results from a research visiting completed a few days ago at the Ohio State University in Columbus. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Leila Vieira of the Center for Latin American Studies, Laura Kissel of the Bird, Polar, and Climate Research Center Archival Program, Michelle Drobic of the University Archives, and Virgilio Ilari of the Italian Society of Military History. US activities and explorations in the Antarctic date back to the beginning of the 19th century. Among the main expeditions, we may mention those of Nathan Brown Palmer, Charles Wilkes, Richard Evelyn Byrd, and Lincoln Ellsworth. A key figure in this research is Admiral Byrd, who led 5 Antarctic expeditions between the 20s and the 50s. In 1929, Byrd established Little American in Whale Bay and achieved a historic polar crossing. 5 years later, he flew over 1,165,000 square kilometers, the area in blue. Between 1939 and 1940, Byrd charted the majority of Ross Sea coastline up to Palmer Peninsula and established West Bays in an area claimed by New Zealand and East Bays in an area claimed by Great Britain. Byrd's 4th Antarctic expedition was Operation I Jump, explored area in yellow. Finally, Operation Deep Freeze, which took place in 1955 and 1956, prelude to the International Geophysical Year. Operation I Jump was a joint Army and Navy project that took place between November 1946 and April 1947. It involved several vessels and aircraft, as well as over 4,000 men. The expedition comprised 3 groups: a central group of land-based aircraft to explore the interior from Little America, and 2 groups of sea-based aircraft, the western and the eastern ones, to map the continental coastlines of Antarctica. A key date was 17 February 1947, when, after 7 years, a US flag was raised again in the Antarctic continent at Little America. Operation I Jump was not just an exploratory expedition. It was also organized to achieve other objectives, which are related to those pursued by the United States Navy in the Arctic a few months earlier during Operation Nanook. Operation I Jump, in particular, aimed also to establish a temporary base and airstrip on the Ross Ice Shelf, train Navy personnel and test military gear in extreme environments, conduct scientific research in several fields. One of the most controversial issues currently under my investigation concerns the relation between Operation I Jump and potential US sovereignty claims in Antarctica. From Byrd's 1929 claims on Mary Berry Land, an area equal to the combined size of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and West Virginia, to Byrd's claim of an area equal to Texas, we are faced with a story whose contours are unclear. Between the 30s and the 40s, the US Antarctic strategy fluctuated between 2 approaches: adopting a wait-and-see policy of reserving rights and actively defending potential US claims to Antarctica. The first approach resulted in a policy of non-recognition of any claim to territorial sovereignty in Antarctica, as demonstrated by the stance taken against British claims in 1929 and against New Zealand claims in 1934. The second approach took a turn with the Antarctic expedition of 1939 and 1940. Byrd had been tasked with substantiating US claims and inaugurating a proactive policy of asserting and perfecting US claims on the continent. This second approach culminated in Operation I Jump. As Admiral Cruzen wrote in November 1946, the US Navy should have also aimed to consolidate and extend United States sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent. A second high jump operation, which was then aborted in August 1949, as stated by the Deputy Director of the Office of European Affairs, was intended to expand the area that the United States could claim. Several reasons were put forward in those years regarding the importance of ensuring US control of a portion of the Antarctic region. Among these was the potential acquisition of valuable resources such as oil, coal, copper, iron, tin, lead, manganese, silver, and gold, increasingly publicized by newspapers. The cancellation of Operation High Jump, too, was also due to the US government's gradual shift towards establishing a condominium over Antarctica. There were also a calculation of the counterproductive consequences in the event that an expansionist policy had been adopted. The assertion of US claims might have accentuated rivalries in Antarctica and might have provoked hostile actions by Soviet Union and other countries. Investigating the history of Operation High Jump provides new insight not only on US polar history, but also on the Antarctic politics of European countries during the same years. For example, Operation High Jump sparked renewed interest among Belgian diplomats and military personnel in defending Belgian interests in the Antarctica. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for your presentation. Now we will open the floor for questions. And we have not a question, but Elizabeth Lewis wanted to congratulate Ursula. I think that message was already delivered. And yes.
Thank you.
If there are not any questions, we will now start with the closing remarks. We would like to invite Professor Han Nielsen, Chief Officer, and Professor Luis Valentín Ferrada, convener of this conference, to deliver the closing remarks and formally conclude today's session.
Han, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for this event, a fantastic event on Antarctica in times of change, which is a very timely topic. The Antarctic physical environment is changing, but also that social environment, the ways that we think about Antarctica, see, interact with that place, and do work on and about the continent. And of course, wherever humans are involved, the HASS disciplines are key. So the SCAR Standing Committee on Humanities and Social Sciences, or SCHASS, is this community of researchers working on diverse aspects as they relate to Antarctica. That membership includes historians, legal scholars, tourism scholars, anthropologists, literature experts, archaeologists, musicologists, and many more, with a really great range represented here at this event. And a key goal of SC has is to help strengthen those local and regional networks of people working on Antarctic topics from the humanities and social sciences. So I hope that you have renewed or made some of those new networks and connections today. Looking forwards to the next IPY, it's going to be really important to focus on collaboration that's international and that's interdisciplinary, and to ensure that we're asking the right questions. So it's very encouraging to see such a range of voices represented here at the current online conference, including practicing artists, lawyers, and scholars from across that spectrum. So those faces old and new. I would like to give really big thanks, of course, to the presenters, but also to the organizers of this, which is the first time that we've had that if the conference we held every 2 years has been held in this format online in that new model of one online conference and then 4 years later our in-person conference. So thank you very much to Louis Valentin Ferrada as the convener of this event. A lot of work has gone into that, of course, and to the team too, many of whom have been working very hard behind the scenes or on our screens over the past couple of days. So Maria Jesus Maiba, Maria Paz Aravena, Magdalena Madrigal, Daniel Troncoso, Diego Arenas, Italo Galliani. We see your names on the website and we really appreciate all your help. And thank you too to the Academic Planning Committee for putting together that program for us. So headed by Louis Valentin Ferrada, we've got Peter Roberts, Jelena Yemakova, Ebru Kaimas, Carolina Flores. Congratulations too on 2 very interesting keynotes. Had some really great comments on those, and hopefully they've sparked a few more conversations afterwards. Seeing some of those projects that are currently underway, and I really hope those conversations continue once the broadcast ends. We're looking forward to hearing about how they develop at the next in-person conference at the SCAR OSC in Oslo in August 2026, and then at the next SC House conference in another 2 years, for which hosting bids are now open. So if you'd like to hear more about that, then we'd love to see you at the business meetings. But thank you again to our hosts, to everyone who's participated today, and a big congratulations. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Han. It's been a real honor for us to organize this meeting. Thank you for all the people who present the research. Has been a wonderful meeting, really. All the records are in YouTube now. We will share the press's address, then it's more easy to find them, but they are in the website, in the YouTube website of Universidad of Chile Faculty of Law. Then if you want to see your presentation, you can do that. Thank you very, very much, and see you next year in Oslo. Bye-bye.
This channel is now signing off. Thank you all for being here with us, and we look forward to seeing you again at the next Standing Committee on Humanity and Science conference.